And Barack Obama will become the first U.S. president to set foot on Cuban soil in nearly 9 decades. His visit in March marks a further thawing of relations between the two countries. Let's head to Washington, D.C., where we can speak to Marion Smith. He is the executive director of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. This is an organization that aims to educate people on what it views as the grim legacy left by communism around the world. Thank you very much for speaking to us. So, mixed emotions and strong opinions about President Obama's upcoming trip to Cuba, but it certainly is a watershed moment between the two countries, isn't it?
It's definitely historic. It is the first time in some 80 years that a sitting U.S. president has visited the island of Cuba. And the thing at issue here is that we all do want a free, prosperous Cuba that is at peace with the United States. I should say that we all want that except for Raul Castro. And even the President Obama, mentioned that there would be no need for him to visit the island unless there had been guarantees by the Castro regime that there would be political or economic reform in the country or greater respect for human rights. Unfortunately, we have not seen that. In fact, in the year since the United States announced an opening with Cuba, there has been an uptick in political prisoners arrested, some 8,000 arbitrary detentions and arrests in the last year. There are currently 60 at least, but between 60 and perhaps 120 prisoners of conscience in Cuba right now. So those of us who have been...
And as you say, there is certainly progress to be made on the human rights issue, isn't there? But the United States has had long-standing relationships with governments in many parts of the world, well, before the presidency of Obama, governments that have a questionable record on human rights. What is there to be achieved by continuing to isolate Cuba?
Well, you're right. We have engaged and had economic openings with, for example, Vietnam and China, both of those communist regimes. But in both of those instances, decades ago, we actually got something for it. There was either economic or political reform in some way. We negotiated very heavily and traded with the Soviet Union when it still existed. And we had a great reason to do it. We had existential issues, missile defense and things of that nature at stake. Here with Cuba, we have no reason to pretend that the Castro regime, which is supporting authoritarian regimes throughout Latin America, which continues to brutally suppress the freedoms of its own citizens, we have no reason to think that they're going to reform, and we have not used any leverage we had to get reciprocal reforms for, frankly, offering the Communist Party in Cuba great legitimacy.
But
and
Cuba
that is what this move will do.
But Cuba hasn't been granted everything it was seeking. You still have the U.S. economic embargo in place, and sanctions are unlikely to be lifted anytime soon.
Yes. When we speak with the families of those who have been detained arbitrarily, when we speak to those who had family members who have been killed because they were politically a threat to the regime, they feel that the current U.S. position towards Cuba has in some sense betrayed them. For many decades, the United States represented the interest of the people of Cuba, and there is a threat at this moment that we're going to be seen to represent the interest of the party in Cuba. And so it's an opportunity for President Obama to emphasize that America stands with the people of Cuba, even though at the moment we are diplomatically engaging with the Castro regime. But there has to be accountability for past crimes that this regime has committed, innocent killings, and there has to be a brighter future, and that brighter future cannot be based on a single-party dictatorship, and it cannot be based on lies about the past. And so it is a historic moment, and it is a great opportunity to speak for the dissidents in Cuba. President Obama could meet some of these individuals, and that would be a great testament to the fact that the United States sees a freer future for them.
Right. Well, Marion Smith, Executive Director of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, thank you for giving us your view.
Thank you.